Welcome back to painting and decorating. So I've had a little bit of inspiration. The last videos that have been put on, there was B.I.N primer used in the video. A few comments on about how difficult it is to use. So I thought I'd do a video on how to use B.I.N primer and a few other bits about the product. So I thought in this video I'd get the board out again. I think my brother has done a lot of videos with this one. It's been a few colours. Let's look at the damage on the back there. Well, damage and repairs at the same time. Anyway, this is the board I'm going to use, and I'm going to show you how to B.I.N prime the skirting, architrave, this flat surface. Then I might do a few other videos on the finishes, the undercoat, satin finish and a gloss finish in emulsion. Right. With any surface when you're painting, there's always preparation. You need to get rid of any dust, grease, watermarks, things like that. And usually what I don't like to do is use a duster brush and just get rid of the dust like that, because you just kick it up into the air. What I like doing is using a damp cloth and wiping the surface over and capture all that dust, rather than carrying it around the room and making more work for yourself. And I always wear a dust mask as well. There you go. Depending on what you're doing, you don't have to wait around. You can use another cloth and dry that off. Once that's fully dry, you're ready for sanding. Actually, I just forgot. When you're washing down, sometimes you do need to put something in your warm water. Sometimes I use like fairy liquid, and then other times you need something stronger, and that's sugar soap. You can use other things as well with the degreasers. And on other occasions you may have some mould, and even if you're going to add a mould inhibitor in your paints, you're still better off getting rid of it first, wiping it over and using a mould killer on it, and then put your paint on. So that surface is dry now. I always like wearing a dust mask, so put that on first, and before I start sanding I'll just show you. P60, but it's worn P60, so that's been over walls, and I find sometimes that's really good for preparation on woodwork. The wall here is not too bad. So when you're doing any sanding, you always generally want to keep in the direction you're going to be painting. So with this woodwork, You know, you don't want to be going across it like that. You always want to sand one direction. You can feel with your hands sometimes for rough parts, because you can't see them all the time. Depending on the light. You always find as well, it's more difficult to sand down a water-based finish than it is an oil-based finish. It's always easier to actually prepare wood that has always been done in the past than it is actually to prepare new wood. So if you ever get a job where you're saying, oh, I've got a load of new wood, it will take 5 minutes. Yeah, it will. So yeah, previously painted wood is a lot easier to prepare and a lot quicker. On the wall, again, generally you want to keep in the same direction. You might find the odd time you need to go a little bit from different directions to get into corners and things like that. A couple of marks in there, so I'm giving them an extra sand just around the end areas. Another good trick, or another good tip, is palm of your hand when you're sanding. If you keep the sandpaper a bit like that, you can actually feel for any major lumps or ridges. But just make sure you've taken out any screws or nails from in the wall. I've hit my hand a few times on them. You soon learn. So, that'll dust off. So once you've dusted that off, put your gloves on and wipe this over with some methylated spirits. Methylated spirits is good to prepare a surface before painting. It actually eats into the surface a little bit, unlike white spirit. white spirit is a better degreaser. And you can see how fast that evaporates. It's basically alcohol, 100% alcohol. Now, storing your brushes, you don't want to be cleaning them out every time, so get yourself a container like that, and that's how we store our brushes and our rollers. So in here, I've got some small brushes if I need them, and then that's a pure bristle, nice and soft. What I do is I actually pour some methylated spirits in there every now and then, and it just keeps them soft. The roller is there, nice and soft, ready to go, and that is an old emulsion roller, not the sponge rollers, because methylated spirits corrodes them. That's been in there for ages and it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. This B.I.N primer, very difficult to use, but you do get used to it. It's always good to have 2 tins. When you first get one, you know, you have to cope with it, but eventually you'll have 2, because when they're really full, they're difficult to use. So when you open these, they're really thin. That's been opened, so it's lost a little bit of its thinness, believe it or not, although it looks that thin. Don't be afraid whatsoever of sticking a good glug of methylated spirits in it. Always keep your hand over the top so they don't pop off. That's the one I've been working out of. Notice how much I put in there then, because it evaporates off that quick. You have to thin it all the time. What I also do, because it does dry so quick, is I actually work out of the pot like that. And if I'm ever doing flat surface like that, then obviously you have to put it in a scuttle to use your roller. So I'm just going to put a bit more in here. Now the trick with this stuff is always to keep it as thin as you can. The thinner the better, almost. Even when you open it, it's just got to add some to it. You never want to let this stuff dry for too long on anything. A little bit wiped them over with that methylated spirits. You can rework this stuff It's a reversible coat. That's just come off there. That's come off there, methylated skirts. So with this as well, you've got to make sure there's no sediment on the bottom. It's all stirred up. And keep stirring it in between using it, and that helps with the sediments. I'm actually going to put some more in here. Last final check of your surface, make sure you're not going to get any bits in it. Always do that before you start painting. Now, this stuff, you've got to be really careful because it dries that fast that as soon as you start pouring it on, it literally is drying. So that's as much as I'm going to go up that side there, to be honest. That one more pass. It does level out, but if you play with it too much, that's it. I'm just going to leave that as it is. And this there. I'm playing with it too much myself now. You've got to leave it because that's drying already now. If I start trying to go back at that, it'll just make it look horrible. If you're doing a large area, what you need to do is work as fast as you can, but don't go over areas too quickly. Allow it to evaporate off before you go too close to them. If you don't, you'll just end up making it look ropey. Now, I'm trying to not get too much on this face before I want to actually roll that. Now, there's quite a lot on this brush. It holds a lot. Just make sure you spread it out quickly and then don't go back over it. Otherwise you'll get it looking really ropey. That's not too bad at all now. Right. Now for the roller bit. I've got my scuttle. The roller arm. Taking my roller out of here, and rub that down on the side of my scuttle. Add a little bit of the B.I.N primer in my scuttle, just enough for what I need. Then, if you was doing any large area or anything really, you need to cut in a little bit. That's why I say I didn't want to just go all over them edges. Gotta be quick. I've already loaded this, so don't go back over that now. I'm not even going to, there's a little bit in it there, but I'm going to leave that because once it's drying, that's it, you've got to leave it alone. Just get a little bit there. There you go, not bad. So that needs to be left to dry now for at least an hour, and that's at a good temperature, and I mean a good temperature of like 19-20 degrees, or for a lot longer in this weather when it's winter. You know, sometimes 24 hours is the best for this stuff. Let me just show you the difference between leaving a side alone and not leaving a side alone. So, when you use it, like I say, you've got to be really quick with it. And then you just leave it alone. Alternatively, you can paint it on, and you can be taking too long in painting it on, and because you're not moving quick enough, it's evaporating, it's getting thicker, you go back near it and it starts lumping up. You're going, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And then you're trying to constantly brush it out. Now that's where your mistake is, because you just got to leave it. It's not like any other paint you've used. It dries in seconds sometimes when you're spreading it out. So the golden rule is get it on, leave it. If you start playing around with it too much, you'll end up with really heavy brush marks in it. So when you're painting large areas, you've got to move quickly, but remember not to go back over something too fast. You've got to leave it just enough so if you do go back over it, you're not working the edge up. So, you know, the more I go with that now, it's just getting worse. And some of them you won't get out, they'll just dry like that from lines. Whereas that one, slightly sitting back. It is really difficult to get rid of any brush marks on any surface, especially with this stuff. But, yeah, right. A bit of a close-up of what I've just done. You can see there on the left how rough that is. So, B.I.N primer, touch dry in 15 minutes, recoatable in 45 minutes in good conditions. Metal primer, it can go over rust. I like to use it actually on radiators a lot before I use acrylic primer undercoat, and then a water-based finish on top, satin or gloss. So this is really good for any rust marks around the job when you're working. Also for leaks on ceilings or walls. It can also cover up mould patches before your emulsion. copper pipes as well. Like I say, it is a metal primer, so it goes over a few different metals. It goes over glass, goes over tiles. Generally sticks to any glossy surface without any preparation, so it says. But you're always best with a little bit of preparation. So yeah, fire damage, soot, nicotine. It seals in odours as well. It's one of those must-have paints on the job. You know, any job you go to, that has got to be with you, because it saves your life so many times on a job. Cracking stuff. One of the best changes, well, one of the best paints I've seen for a while. So let's have a quick look at the board. There you go. Right. Now, generally, touch dry. It's not too bad. Don't want to go too far into the corners, because it's usually in corners where it stays wet for longer. So that's it for this video. Hope some of that helps you. The next video's I'm going to do on this board, doing a bit of filling, emulsion, and then finishing off with the trim, bit of cutting in, things like that. See you in the next video.